Well, welcome everyone to what I hope will be a pretty brief overview of what we mean by deep learning, at least in the Windsor Central Supervisory Union. My name is Tim Brennan, and I've been working inside this district for the past several years, promoting the idea of deep learning and trying to understand what deep learning classrooms might look like. So what we're going to do here in this quick video is to just take a look at the literature, educational literature, and see what various folks around the space of education research, what they say about deep learning, and then come to what I hope will be a not very surprising but hopefully satisfying adaptation of the literature to our very particular circumstance here in our district. So let's get underway. Let's take a look at a couple of different pieces from the literature. Okay, so in the book Deep Learning, Engage the World, Change the World, Fullen, Quinn, and McEachin say that deep learning is the process of acquiring these 6 global competencies: character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking, or the so-called 6 C's. These are big ideas. They may sound familiar to you. They may be the kinds of things that you think of when you are thinking about what you'd like your students to be, what kind of people you'd like them to be. So that's our first data point. Our second data point comes from the Hewlett Foundation. And they say something very similar: develop significant understanding of core academic content, exhibit critical thinking and problem-solving skills, collaborate, communicate, direct their own learning, and possess an academic mindset. So somewhat similar, but maybe a little bit different list of these competencies, if you will, what the deep learning people in the previous slide would say would be global competencies, right? We've got these slightly different lists, but similar in purpose. All right, let's look at one more, okay? The National Research Council, now over a decade ago, said that deeper learning is the process through which a person becomes capable of taking what was learned in one situation, applying it to new situations, in other words, learning for transfer. And then near the end of their discussion of this, they say transferable knowledge and skills in the cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal domains. So somewhat broader, I think, than the others in that they don't list particular skills, but I think you could argue that the skills listed by the Hewlett Foundation and others would get at these cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal domains. Okay, so we in our district have developed something called the Portrait of the Graduate, and the Portrait of the Graduate gets to many of these more global competencies, okay? So the conclusion we're drawing is this, and the conclusion that we have drawn is this, that deeper learning is, and I would almost say the word merely, but that I don't want to underscore the challenge of it, but deeper learning is the process of acquiring Portrait of a Graduate outcomes. We've done the important work of determining our Portrait of the Graduate, and we have them in 5 categories. We have 5 different categories of Portrait of the Graduate outcomes, and each has their own set of indicators. This slide just shows 4 of the 5 for reasons I'll talk about in a moment, but if you take a look there, we've got self-direction, stewardship, critical thinking and problem solving, and skillful communications. Many of those ideas were referenced by the literature, as being the global competencies. And I think when you look at the indicators underneath each one, you'll see that they do get to those interpersonal and intrapersonal types of development that the National Research Council was talking about. Okay, the fifth category is academic excellence, and it's not listed here for the simple reason of just readability, and for a little bit more of a thought on the idea that if we do these other four, the academic excellence will likely take care of itself. But you probably have a version of the Portrait of the Graduate that is complete, but just on this slide here, we're looking at 4 out of the 5 elements of our Portrait of the Graduate. So that's our starting point. If you are going to be doing deep learning work in the Windsor Central District, you're going to be thinking about how you can infuse your curriculum, your instruction, your assessment with Portrait of the Graduate outcomes. And so that's where we start from, okay? There's a great challenge there. There's a lot of interesting opportunity there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy, but I do think there's an element of clarity to our work, which maybe doesn't exist in other districts. Okay, thanks for joining me here, and I hope that you and I can be involved in some rich conversations about deep learning.